Markets might have recovered from the lows of the morning, but perhaps what we witnessed last evening is an event and an issue that goes much, much beyond the next day's market reaction. Lata is here with us to discuss exactly that with a very special guest.
Yes, sir. I have with me Dr. Subbarao, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, and he's here to discuss what is an extremely unusual and perhaps a sad occurrence at the Reserve Bank of India. Good morning, Dr. Subbarao. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, first up, I just wanted your first reactions when you heard the news. The event is destabilizing, you think?
My first reaction was of some surprise and some no surprise as well, because no surprise because for over the last 2 months, the possibility of Dr. Patel resigning has been in the realm of speculation. But I was also surprised because there was an impression that after the 19th November meeting, the government and the Reserve Bank had resolved the outstanding issues. But evidently, Governor Patel seems to have been pushed beyond this level of comfort, and there comes the resignation.
Okay. We are still in the realm of speculation, but the understanding is that at the upcoming December 14th board meeting, the board was to get extraordinary powers over all actions of the Reserve Bank. Do you think this would have been beyond, as you call, the realm of comfort of any Reserve Bank governor?
Oh, absolutely. Because the board of the Reserve Bank, as currently structured, is not an appropriate forum for taking decisions on policy issues. There are, of course, eminent people on the board, or people of exceptional quality and caliber, who can advise the governor on the management of the RBI. But the board is enjoined to take decisions on administrative and managerial issues and advise the governor on the management of RBI on policy issues. If the policy issues have to be taken in a committee or in a board, the board has to be structured differently. It has to have people who will have no conflict of interest. And also, I think they have to be full-time directors on the board, not people who are part-time like this now.
Oh, yes. I never thought of that, sir. But now when the government looks for a new governor, if this is the service conditions that the board will closely supervise, and the board is what it is, it cannot be changed unless perhaps the law is rewritten or different conventions are set. If these are the service conditions, do you think it will deter the next candidate?
Well, you know, I don't want to prejudge or pre-guess or second-guess anything. But it cannot be the presumption that the government will not introspect and not take a lesson from this. I'm sure that the government has the maturity experience. They will introspect on Governor Patel's resignation and also perhaps examine in what way they will have to push their agenda. Push is the wrong word, but in what way they'll have to pursue their agenda, to what limits they can push it, and at what point of time they have to withdraw. So the government will have to do some deliberate, serious introspection on this. So given that the government will do that, the next incumbent governor, who she or he, will of course have the task of restoring the credibility of the RBI and entering into a working arrangement with the government, which does not give the impression of being influenced beyond acceptable levels by the government.
Yes, sir. Many experts did tell us that much of the market and the economy's reaction will depend on the personality of the next governor. We have had two academics from outside the government system with Urjit Patel and Raghuram Rajan. Before that, we had people from the civil service. Who do you think is the best incumbent now?
I can't speculate on either specific names or specific categories that the governor should be drawn from. But I want to say this, that there's an enormous amount of talent in the country. I can think of at least a dozen candidates who would credibly fit the bill of the governor. And I think the government should draw up a long list, narrow down to a shorter list, and choose a candidate who will command the credibility of the market, who is known for professional competence and for maturity of handling the relationship with the government.
Will all former governors have had a doctoral degree in economics in the recent past? I mean, if I go as far back as Dr. Rangarajan, and I have not reported before that. So do you think that would be important, a qualification in economics or finance?
Not so sure that qualification in economics or a doctorate in economics is an essential or even necessary condition or qualification for the governor. You should, of course, have professional competence in economics and should have the intelligence to appreciate economic advice given to him and make a judgment. You know, for example, Lata, when Christine Lagarde came in as the MD of IMF, a lot of people said that she's a lawyer and will not be able to perform as the MD of the IMF. But over the last 7 or 8 years, she's demonstrated that even a non-economist can do very well as the MD of the IMF. So I believe that a non-economist can do very well even as the governor of the RBI.
Okay.
Or at least not a non-economist, but somebody who does not have a PhD in economics.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point, sir. You know, you were speaking about the government being able to pursue its agenda with the next incumbent and at the same time give him independence. Do you think the Reserve Bank pursued its agenda a bit too much without giving the government its space? Or do you think the Reserve Bank was not allowed to do its legitimate agenda of maybe cleaning up banks or, you know, restraining NBFCs?
That's a loaded question, Lata, because, you know, all the information I have is what is in the public media, and I do not have any inside information. So.
Okay, but this is nevertheless a very difficult situation for the government and for the RBI. On the one hand, the bank cleanup is not over. On the other, the debt markets still have a problem. And yet it is a hard-fought autonomy of the central bank, and that perception or credibility should not be lost. What's the best way out, sir?
The best way out is for the next governor to establish credibility, perform in such a way that there is absolutely no scope for any doubt that is not acting independently. We should the market should be convinced that it's acting independently. And on the government side, I think there's much more work to be done or homework to be done on the government side. They must, as I said earlier, introspect on what's happened and the circumstances and developments over the last 2 months that have culminated in Dr. Patel's resignation. And in what way they must change their stance. Will they continue to aggressively or assert their agenda and pursue it? Or will they take a lesson from this experience and modify the stance and learn to defer to the RBI? You know, all the concerns or all the issues that the government has raised with the RBI are legitimate concerns of the government. Nobody can say that the government should not have raised them. But there are concerns about how the government has raised them, to what extent they pushed them, and to what extent they were going to push further beyond the comfort level of the RBI and of the governor.
Yeah. So we did speak about the board getting too much supervisory powers over the governor, and that could have been the last straw. But a previous issue that appears to have riled the Reserve Bank, at least from the outside it appears, is that one of the appointments to the board was clearly a political appointment, in the sense Mr. Gurumurthy is seen as very close to the ruling party. Do you think that was a seminal error and the government should retrace such steps?
I should not comment on that because I have no exposure to what's happened inside the board meeting. There's been a lot of speculation about how a specific director, how he or she interacted in the board meeting, but it's unfair for me to comment on that. But I think the government should, in appointing directors to the board, should choose people for their professional competence, for maturity, and for how they project the larger public purpose within the RBI. it's not, I wouldn't say that a person with political leaning should not be appointed, but that person should not be allowed to bring those political leanings onto the board meeting.
Okay, but it is a breaking of precedent, isn't it? Can you remember any such, politically inclined appointees?
I can't say that. There were earlier, I believe, some people who were ministers in some state cabinets, etc. Okay. But I think they were chosen for their larger understanding of the ground level situation. And I don't think they brought the political agenda or specific political leanings into the board discussions.
Okay, that's anyway in the past. Now for the future, what's the best way to go forward? Normally, Reserve Bank governors are not chosen by search committees. It's usually between the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. It's a very high-level decision. But under the circumstances, do you think a high-level search committee of maybe former governors or very respected, eminent men would be a good idea? We must also remember that, this government has another 4-5 months, and thereafter there is an election. It's possible the same government comes back. It's possible that it comes back with a coalition or another coalition comes. So do you think this particular appointment should be made differently? Do you need an interim governor? What should be the best course?
Well, I don't know about the optics of the selection of the next governor, but as far as the actual selection goes, whether it's a committee or whether it's the finance minister or the prime minister, we have to remember that whoever is appointed as the governor, he or she will be a known quantity. It's not as if they're going to bring somebody who is totally unknown.
Yeah.
So that person would be known both for his or her professional competence as well as for maturity and for experience. So I don't think a committee is an absolute necessity.
Okay.
They can, of course, consult people and select them, as I said earlier, make a long list and then bring it down to a short list.
Okay. What's the one lesson from the rather unfortunate event of the governor's resignation?
You're putting me on the spot. But I would say that there's a bigger lesson for the government about taking stock of what's happened. And again, I have to repeat what I said earlier. As much as they've pursued the right issues, perhaps they should check whether they have pursued them in the right way and to the right limit. They should be, in Telugu, which I speak, there is a phrase for that. It is, so far you go and then withdraw. You have to know when to withdraw. And I think the government has to identify that point.
Okay. Well, just a final question, sir. You move in international fora. What will the international fora take from this? Has the government and the Reserve Bank suffered a blow for its credibility, or do you think it can be quickly restored?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to say blow, but there certainly will be a question about the government's respect for institutions such as the Reserve Bank, regulators, etc. And markets will want to see whether going forward the government will take corrective action in terms of its interactions with the regulators and to what extent they will pursue their agenda.
Okay. Well, Dr. Subbarao, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and giving us your thoughts on what's a very sticky situation for the Indian government and for the Reserve Bank.
Thank you, Lata. Thanks very much.
Okay. Well, there you are. A lot can be mended if the government takes lessons and does not bear down on the next incumbent. Then perhaps credibility can be quickly restored.
All right, Lata, thanks so much for that. Well, a quick check on the markets before we slip into that break. The markets are more or less flattish. A couple of stocks moving up. Mahindra and Mahindra moving higher. And a couple of these other stocks, consumption theme seems to be playing out. You have the stocks like Marico that's moved to the high point of the day. Colgate, by the way, is up 5.5% in an otherwise weakish market. Marico is up nearly around 5% as well. And Nestle as well is moving higher. So all these stocks, they are moving higher, and they're moving higher on very, very high volumes. We'll slip into a short break, come back, continue our focus on markets and on various stocks. Stay with us.